Maomao thought. Her sister's sexual appetites were greater than ordinary. For her, a good customer was more than just one with a lot of cash. He had undoubtedly been a well-built specimen of a man. "Here," she said, "you will be needing this for sure. Put it on every morning, then wash your face to take it off before you go to bed." Maomao placed a ceramic vessel in Maomao's hand. It presumably contained some sort of cream that would be good for the skin. "I'm not sure I'm always going to get the chance to wash my face," Maomao said. The western capital was a long distance away. Whether they travelled by land or by sea, water would be precious. "Are they going to take our little Maomao somewhere like that? What idiot made that decision?" demanded Joker. "Funny you should ask. You might know him as a certain masked noble. That accounted for all three of the Verdigris house's famous princesses. Ooh, I'm worried about you. Is it too late for you to back out, Maomao?" Perrin said, hugging her close. She really had been busy the night before. The warmth was still radiating off her. Just think about it. "The money we work so hard to earn, the nobles are wasting on a vacation," Joker spat. "Not at all," Maomao said. "Those nobles help our business thrive. We will just have to get everything we can from them and make sure the cycle continues." Her laughter was clear and loud, a pointed contrast to the meaning of what she was saying. She gazed out the window. "I admit I am as worried as any of you, but I think someone is travelling with us who will be ruthless if anyone dares to lay a finger on Maomao." Now she looked at Maomao, her gaze sorrowful. "Maomao," said Maomao, "I will be direct, but I am more worried about him than anyone." The freak strategist was going with them. Maomao did not know why, but if the people in the western capital had understood who they were dealing with, they would have asked him to stay home. Or maybe they were not in a position to refuse. Do not tell me they actually invited him. His absence would not be an issue in the capital. His subordinates could keep his office running smoothly for months without him. Maomao's real fear was about what kind of trouble he might cause on the road. Just picturing it was enough to make her head hurt. Was this really what they were using her for? She ground her teeth. She had always known he could and would use anyone available to him. It was her fault for forgetting. In fact, oddly, she felt a small sense of relief to realize that the way he handled people hadn't changed since the rear palace. Those who stood at the top could not afford to be swept away by sentiment. Jinchi's behavior could be emotional at times, but Maomao believed there was still some trace of rationality at work in those moments. At least that is what she wanted to believe. No, it wasn't possible, she thought, immediately dismissing the idea. Otherwise, he would never have burned a brand into his own skin. Having said all that, maybe this wasn't really Jinchi's fault. His hands might have been tied when he selected personnel. It did not really matter. In the end, it meant trouble for Maomao and nothing but. She was putting away the cream Maomao had given her when a smart Aleki voice said from behind her, "Hey, Freckles." "Yeah, what chew you?" Maomao turned annoyed. "You are dumb," he shouted, and with that the smart-mouthed brat ran off. He still dragged one partially paralyzed leg, but it obviously did not dampen his spirits. His lackey Yulin likewise stuck out her tongue at Maomao, then ran after Chuyu. "What was that about?" Maomao muttered. "Chuyu misses you," Maomao said. "HRM. And it looks like Yulin is still following him around. That just started again recently." Maomao looked troubled. "Started again? She has an older sister, you remember. The girl you brought in was training with her. She was an apprentice, and this year she began taking customers." "She did, huh? So many women came and went in the Verdigris house. Maomao didn't really keep track of them all. Isn't that a bit early?" She recalled the young woman being awfully thin. "She is 15. A good diet helped her gain weight, and our customers began to notice. She had everything she needed. She must have been eating poorly where she came from. Moreover, the girl herself was ambitious. She had been eager to make her debut. It all must have inspired conflicting feelings in her younger sister. She is not very cultured yet, but I think she will grow into it, that girl." "You think so?" "I think she's a bit too prickly," Joker said. Perrin laughed openly at that. "That's the last thing I want to hear from a woman who took the name Joker." It was not the name her parents had given her. The madam had been known to rename girls. She did this to encourage them to forget their past lives. But Joker had given herself a name that was a parody of the name of the goddess who had created the world. It audaciously included the supposedly forbidden character Ka. My mother always told me my father was someone very important. She sometimes said I have every right to use it. A father who would justify the use of that character. Only the imperial family could do that. About the only person fitting that description whose age would make sense with Joker, was the former emperor, but Maomao was well aware that was impossible. How must Joker have felt to know that her mother had been deceived? Perhaps that was the source of her dislike of men. It was possible. To make matters worse, the old madam had allowed her to be called that prickly name. It was very frightening. The verdigris house would continue without Maomao. It was full of strong women, and actually the men here were quite strong as well, so everything would be fine. Maomao sighed and moved on to the next part of her preparations. The sun was already low in the sky when Maomao finished shopping and returned to the dormitory. This next step might be the most difficult of all, she thought as she sighed and entered the building. She could hear the steady thunk of a cleaver. Maomao thought she is still at it. She peeked into the kitchen. Yao was there chopping chicken under Enen's direction. She was hardly an expert yet, but she had dialed back the bone-smashing vigor of the other day. Now she looked like she was cooking a proper meal. Maomao did not say anything. Enen did not say anything. Yao was too focused on her chicken to notice Maomao. Enen saw Maomao there and shot her a pleading look. Maomao thought, I think she is saying, we are concentrating right now. Please do not interrupt. Maomao was heading to her room when she met the woman who ran the dorm coming the other way. Maomao, is it true you will be going away for several months? I can leave your room for you, but do you want me to clean it? The woman's voice carried well, easily all the way to the kitchen. The result was predictable. An ouch was followed by a mistress. Maomao peeked through a crack in the door. She saw pretty much what she had expected. Don't do that, young mistress, Enen said. You mustn't put your finger in your mouth. Raw chicken meat is dangerous. Here, I'll give you some first aid. Even meat intended for food could contain poison or bugs. I think that's a bit much, Enen, said Maomao as she watched Enen wrap so much bandage around Yao's hand that it was practically immobilized. Maomao had involved herself now, but Yao looked peeved. Yao clearly wanted to say something, but Maomao was not the most socially skilled person. She wasn't sure what she should say to Yao. She was still learning how to hold the cleaver properly, so it seemed unlikely that Dr. Liu had invited her to join the special classes yet. Finally, Maomao said simply, I'm sorry. I am going to be going away for a while. Enen said, I understand, and she looked sorry about it, but for just an instant, an expression passed over her face that Maomao couldn't quite name. It said, now it will be just me and Lady Yao. Thankfully, Yao was looking at the floor and did not notice. Maomao suspected Yao understood as well as Enen did. She was a smart woman and she understood what was happening intellectually. It just took her emotions some time to catch up. She is still only 16, Maomao reminded herself. That is 4 years younger than Maomao. Figuring she had said all she could say, Maomao was about to go back to her room when she heard another thump. This time someone was stomping on the floor. Maomao, yes. Yao's breath whooshed out of her nostrils like an angry boar. She stood tall, resolution clear on her face. Young mistress. Enen had produced 2 folding fans. One was inscribed Yao, the other go for it. Where had she gotten those? Truly, this was a lady in waiting of sublime accomplishments. Yao gave one more great snort and stood in front of Maomao. Here, young mistress. Enen handed her some kind of booklet. MN, Yao pressed the booklet at Maomao. WH, what's this? WH, what do you mean, what? Yao couldn't quite seem to get an explanation out, so Enen helped. She copied things from the books in the library. She collected as many examples as she could find that aren't in the textbook, so I think even you will be surprised by some of what is in there, Maomao. What? Holy moly, I want that. Can I really take this? Well, I said you could have it, Yao replied, although she had not actually said that. If she was offering it, she didn't have to offer twice. Maomao took the book and immediately began flipping through it. Wow, woo-woo, oh no, don't look now, listen, I didn't do anything, that's a big deal. Enen insisted, so I copied out a little bit, just a little bit. She was as sweet as she was sour, this girl. It was almost too much. Unfortunately for Yao, Maomao could tell the difference between her handwriting and Enen's, but she was decent enough not to point out which of them had done the copying. Instead, she bowed her head and said, thank you very much. Almost before she knew what she was doing, she'd even grabbed Yao's hand in a handshake. To be perfectly honest, she was so happy snot could have come pouring out of her nose. HMPH. Well, you will need something to pass the time on your trip. Yao was blushing and her voice seemed very quiet. Behind her, NN gave the handshake an icy look. I will be sure to get you something as a souvenir in return, Maomao said. I do not need any souvenir, Yao said and went back to the cutting board still looking annoyed. You cannot chop anything in that condition. At least let me tend to your injury, Maomao said. If she let NN do all the treatment, Yao seemed likely to end up as a bandage mummy. Yao submitted to Maomao's ministrations, but NN loomed threateningly nearby the entire time. Chapter 16, A Voyage by Sea. On the day they were to leave, Maomao found herself riding in a carriage with a single bundle of belongings on her back. It is as emotional as it is ordinary now. Yao and NN had been there to see her off. NN looked about the way she always did, and Yao was a bit sulky. Maomao did feel sad to say goodbye, but she knew she would return. Her medical supplies had been prepared and packed beforehand. Other necessities were also included with the cargo. She only carried fresh clothes and the book Yao and NN had given her. Maomao did not suffer from carriage sickness, so she looked forward to passing the time by reading. She thought she had heard there were 4 doctors going, but in the end, no one had told her exactly who they were. This nagged at her. There was every indication that they were hiding something. No sooner had she boarded the carriage than she found out who one of the doctors was. Ooh, is that the ship we will be on? Tianyu stuck his head out. Maomao had been expecting him. After all of Dr. Liu's prodding, he was still the only volunteer. He was awfully inexperienced for an assignment like this. I guess I am not one to talk. Maomao had been chosen as well, although she was not counted among the physicians, so there were 4 doctors and 1 helper. Dr. Liu had mentioned a shortage of personnel, so he must have considered this selection carefully. Maomao had to remind herself that she was there to help, but also not to forget her real purpose. The imperial younger brother, also known as Jinshi, would be on this trip. The unusual strategist would be there as well, making this a larger event than the last one. 3 large sailing ships waited for them. They were the biggest Maomao had ever seen. She was told they would be traveling by sea and the ships looked ready for the journey. Each ship had 4 or 5 masts. She also saw cannons on each one. The ships' construction showed they had been heavily influenced by Western technology. However, gaudy red, green and gold colouring marked them as Linese vessels. Maomao did not know how large the ships were inside. They looked like they could easily hold several hundred people each. Perhaps even 1,000 people could fit if everyone squeezed together. Maomao asked before she could stop herself, will this really be faster than travelling overland? She had taken a boat home from her last visit to the western capital, but this time they would be travelling by sea, not river. The sea route was certainly longer, but you could travel without interruption, both day and night. One of the upper physicians offered an explanation, tinged with resentment. He was a man with a beard and a rugged face. He said it was likely due to all the cargo needed when a very important person stayed somewhere for a long time. He added that all the gifts they had to bring contributed to the amount of cargo. His skin was noticeably tanned, even though he likely spent most of his time at a desk. He had light hair which suggested some foreign blood in his family. Maomao vaguely recognized him, but they worked in different medical offices, so she did not know his name. It was clear he was one of the 4 doctors selected for this trip. Yes, that makes sense, Maomao said. Usually she could have easily pretended she remembered his name. However, this time she would need to learn it. She would find out later. I am going to be in charge during the trip, the physician said. I look forward to working with you. Maomao thought he seemed grounded. Knowing Dr. Liu, he would have chosen his people not just for their skill, but for their attitudes as well. This man seemed to have come from the western capital himself. He said the other 2 physicians are already on board. I will be on the lead ship, Tianyu will be on the rear ship, and Nyang, you will be on the middle one. You'll be accompanied by another of the upper physicians. Maomao didn't say a word. Should she tell him he had her name wrong? Then again, did she have any right to, considering she couldn't remember his either? She settled for a question. Yes, who else is going to be on the ship with me? She gave a great, vast, mighty scowl as she spoke. The center vessel is for our most important traveler. A relative youngster. Couldn't you tell by how sumptuous it is? The ship in the middle was indeed the largest and most gaudy of all. A youngster, Maomao echoed, wondering if she could feel relief yet. That seemed to imply it was Jinchi, not the freak. I might have guessed, but still. That also left her wondering which physician would accompany her. If Jinchi summoned Maomao to him alone, it could raise suspicions. Liu Humin tells us that Grand Commandant Kan is generally fairly subdued on a rocking boat. He just needs anti-nausea medications and some juice to supplement his nutrition. Is that so, sir? If he got seasick, that would make him much like Lahan. It wasn't just alcohol that made his head spin, apparently. Have they told you what you need to know about the ships? Yes, sir. They said there is a medical office on board. All the necessary equipment will be stored there, and that is where I will be sleeping for the most part. That is right. You are welcome to sleep with the ladies in waiting if you like, Nyang Nyang. The office, please. The presence of ladies in waiting was natural enough. Jinchi could hardly travel without them. But will Suhen be there? Suhen is Jinchi's attendant and is getting older. A trip this long would be hard on her, but if she wasn't here, the only other candidate Maomao could think of would be Basin's older sister, Mame. Didn't I hear something about her having children? Asking a mother to leave her children for such a long time wouldn't be easy. Maomao pondered the situation, but in any case there would be other ladies in waiting on board. They would be carefully chosen, no doubt, but it would still be in Maomao's best interests to keep her distance. The other physician on board can fill you in on anything else you want to know, said the doctor with the beard. Yeah, okay, but who is he? They seemed happy to tell everyone that the freak strategist would be along, so why were they being so cagey about the doctor? It didn't make sense. Oh, it's you, sir, Tianyu said as he got on his boat. Got a problem with that, snapped the middle physician from the convocation. He had looked like something of an overachiever, and apparently on this occasion it had blown up in his face. Naturally, Maomao did not know his name. It was not who I was worried about. She boarded her boat, still wondering who the other physician could be. On board, the sailors were working industriously. I wonder if that is our VIP's room. Sumptuous chambers jutted up from the deck. They had a nice breeze and were certainly well appointed. The same room would not have looked out of place at a villa belonging to the imperial family. It looks the most comfortable, but also like the most obvious target. Maomao went down the stairs below decks. The damp air clung to her skin. There were no walls, perhaps to allow the air to move through better. There were only the flimsiest excuses for dividers in the space. Maomao thought the bureaucrats would probably have to sleep packed in down here. Mealtimes would be much the same. The ship had hired sailors, so the administrators would have more free time. Board games were likely to become even more popular as the ships lacked other entertainment. The ship carried enough cannons to function as a battleship. There were a few areas that were properly walled off. These were probably rooms for the ladies in waiting and the more important travellers. The gender ratio on this ship was very much in favour of the men. The separate rooms were presumably to keep anyone from getting any funny ideas, as they might have if everyone were sleeping together. Gee, this is kind of exciting. She admitted she was probably going to be sick of this ship after seeing it all day, every day for the duration of the trip. But anyone wants to explore a new environment. There were stout ropes and wooden flotation devices on the walls. The ship had 3 levels. There was a 4th level if you counted the VIP chamber above deck. The next floor down was similar to the one above it. However, this floor contained the medical office and the kitchen. Maomao decided to save the medical office for last. Instead, she went to have a look at the kitchen. It contained several water barrels and a stove. The stove was cleverly built to allow smoke to escape. Using fire on board a ship was scary stuff. The area around the stove was built with fire-resistant materials, but you would still have to be very careful. It looked like a very small kitchen considering the number of people aboard. It was probably intended to cook the VIP's meals, and little more. Grunts such as Maomao would have to be content with warm soup. Everything you ate eventually had to come out the other end. Maomao was simply wondering where the bathroom was when she saw a structure built out on the prow of the ship. It was likely built to let things fall straight into the sea, perhaps even someone who wasn't paying attention. Maomao planned to be careful. The cargo was at the very bottom of the ship. Munitions and water were stored there, along with provisions and what Maomao thought were gifts for the western capital. She was not pleased to see the sweet potatoes. It was clear who had convinced everyone to buy them. Would they really keep? She looked inside one of the wooden boxes. The potatoes had been stored in rice husks, probably to protect them from the humidity. Once she was satisfied she had seen the rest of the ship, Maomao went to the medical office. It had real walls so they could quarantine anyone who might be sick. When she opened the door she found the master of the place sitting in a chair. He was a man of soft and gentle mien. She did not say anything. For a second she thought it was her old man Lumen, but it wasn't quite. "Oh, hello, young lady." The voice was carefree and familiar.